Hi everyone, so I'm back with another word. I was sitting in my, actually laying down in my bed. It was early. I took the dog out to go for his bathroom break, and I came back thinking about the dream I had just had. And as I was sitting there, or laying there, I began to think about the vine. And then God started to take over. And he reminded me of how he was telling me about the vine. And there is a video that I did in my early days where it's about a plant that I had on the patio, and the leaves had started to wither. Even though I was taking care of it just like I had always taken care of it, the weather had changed a little bit, but it wasn't drastic enough for the plant to start showing signs of dying. And it was the big leaves, the beautiful big leaves, that started to die off first, and then the smaller leaves, and then it stopped growing. And God didn't let me prune it right away. And I talk about that in the video, until one day he said, okay, now go and take off everything that I'm going to show you. And I did, even things that I thought were good and they were not dead, he had me take them off. He's like, no, take those off too, because they've been infected, is what he said. And I was like, I didn't understand. And then, so as I'm sitting there, he's starting to give me a vision of himself, and how he starts to take the vine and he starts to rip pieces off of himself. And he goes, look what happens to the vine as I tear it off. And I said, well, I know that these types of plants, if you put them in water, they will grow roots. And he goes, that's right. Some of them will even try to grow roots even if they're not in water. They just need soil. And it doesn't have to be good soil. And I was like, what? And he goes, look at that plant over there. I just tore it off of me. And I was like, now all of this is it's not being spoken. It's being understood. Like, he's not speaking to me. I'm understanding what he's showing me, and I can hear the words are like all of a sudden there. Like, I know what he's saying to me, and I'm going like, I'm so intrigued by the action that's being taken in front of me that I'm not questioning why I'm hearing, like why the words are just appearing in my head and why I'm not hearing his voice like I normally would. I just know what he's saying to me just by what he's showing me. And so he tells me to look at this one leaf that he took off, and it still had a piece of the vine, it had the stem. And all of a sudden, these little white feelers started to grow out of it, which are the roots. And he goes, look, it's going to try and plant itself right there. And he goes, but that's not good soil. It's going to eventually become like its environment, dirty and gross, and it's going to be infected with whatever the soil has. But it's going to make an attempt to do it. It's going to make an attempt to grow. It's going to make an attempt to live. It's going to make an attempt, even though it's not supposed to. It's supposed to die because I tore it off. It wants to go against what the Creator is telling it to do. And he goes, look at it. And I did. I started to see the roots come out of it like tentacles. And I was like, ew. And he goes, now look at it from a peripheral, like look at the long view. And as I did that, I began to see like sprouting of these vines or these weeds in between the good things, in between the good soil. And he goes, do you see that? Do you see how it's not like the good ones? It's not like the ones I kept on me, because those are still growing. They're still, in between these weeds are these beautiful green flourishing vines. Now they're not big like the other ones. They're very demure. they're very, it's almost like they're always budding, is like what they look like. Have you ever seen a rose before it fully opens? When it starts to uncurl its flowers and it starts to look full, it's right before it unfurls completely that it looks the most beautiful. That's the state that God wants us to stay at forever. He doesn't want us to fully flourish. He doesn't want us to completely bring out everything that's beautiful within us. He wants us to do it at a certain stage. And He wants us to do it when we're still small and we're still little and we're just barely, so that others cannot see our beauty, our complete beauty, unless they come to Him. And so I'm looking at it and I'm going, wow, these little ones, they're so beautiful. And He just kept the words just kept showing up, and I was like, wow, so this is what it looks like from your ankle. He goes, yeah. And I was like, whoa, that's pretty insane. And it did, and it started, so the city started to grow in between these places, in between these vines, and it started to hide the weeds, because the city began to look like the weeds, so now you couldn't tell the difference. And because these beautiful vines were in between the city and growing up the walls of the city, they were basically hiding it, so nobody could tell the difference. So the ugly weeds were taking on the shape and the look of the beautiful, wonderfully made vine leaves. And they started to mix themselves, and and as one mixed itself with another one, when a true vine mixed itself with a weed, it didn't break off the vine. It would just sprout its own separate line. But that line would have to get cut off because that wasn't of the true vine. And I found it interesting that God was bringing that analogy back, the analogy of the vine, and how that vine is what He is cleaning today. And it is also interesting to me that the words just appeared. I no longer had to hear His voice. I will know what He wants me to do just by what I see, because I know Him enough. I also wanted to tell you guys a little bit about what's been happening at work since the 27th. So these four girls, because it's four of them, and I told you one of their names. I haven't said the other three names because they haven't worked with me. Since they went to the supervisor and they tried to turn the tides against me, they couldn't, because God wouldn't let them. Because God said to me, instead of having me fight or get angry or go and talk to them, He said, no, I just want you to be more like me. And I said, okay. So I go into the lobby. I get there early because they know I'm on the bus. I get there early and I start listening to worship music. And I sing and I dance. And then on Sunday, on Sunday I had to open. And so I got there at 9, or I got there at 8:30 because I ended up going to go get some coffee and some donuts, and God led me to bring some donuts in for the guys, for the team. But it's normally just guys. There's only usually one girl there. But I forgot Abby was going to be there, so because she's changed from the nights to the days. She's actually a very sweet girl. She's lost, and God doesn't have me mention the things against her that she's done, or, it's not my place, that's God's place. I think she's the sweetest girl. She's so nice, so kind. And she wants to be a filmmaker. And so I've been talking to her about what she wants to be when she grows up. And so then I brought in the donut holes, and I put them out, and I said, hey, everybody, have some donuts. I bought them for everybody. And then I went and I put on God never has me do this, okay? Never. And he says, put on your headphones. I'm like, okay. So I put on my headphones, and he goes, put on my worship music. I'm like, okay. So I put on the worship music, and of course, I start to sing. When I hear songs that move me, I start to sing, and God knows that. So I'm standing there, and I'm singing. I have no idea that one of the girls has come through the back door. Apparently, she switched with the young man who was supposed to be there in the morning. And I had already all planned out. I said, okay, I'm going to finish these. I'm going to make enough so that we have enough for the day. And then I'm going to go and I'm going to have him make the salads. When she got there, I didn't know she was there because I had my headphones on. I didn't hear her. But I was still singing. So I came around the corner and I was like, hey, Cody, who's the manager that hired me. I said, where's Jack? And he goes, oh, Jack's not coming in. Instead, it's Carla. Carla's one of the girls. And I was like, what? Oh, okay. I can't tell Carla what to do because she's a manager. And if I start telling her what to do, there's going to be an issue. Because now she has a reason to go and complain about me. Granted, it shouldn't be that way because as one of the employees, she's not a manager 100% of the time. She's an employee just like me, who also happens to be a manager on certain days, but not at the store that we work at. But she has the title of manager. And she only acts like a manager when she wants to get out of doing things. So I knew I was going to have to make the salads myself, which is fine. I didn't care. So I got so I went back to doing the ranch like I was doing. And she decided that because I was there, I did overhear her say this. So who's the first one to go home today? And of course, the manager said, Diana. She goes, okay, I'll be back in a couple of hours. And he goes, okay, whatever. So she left. Of course, because the other girl that was coming in was also her friend, and her name is Jade. And so there's 3 of the 4. And so she left, I guess, to go pick up the other girl. They went, did whatever, and came back. And when they came back, we were open, but we weren't busy yet. So they stayed off the clock. They didn't sign in. And then, because the manager told them that I would be going home. If we didn't get busy, I'd be going home about 2 o'clock. And then they finally clocked in, and I went on break. And then when I went on break, I was in the lobby and I was singing again. And then I came back, logged back in, and we still weren't busy. And I looked at the manager and I said, hey, you know what? I'm going to go wash dishes, okay? And he goes, all right. But halfway through the dishes, he looks at me and he goes, do you have a couple choices? He goes, you can go home right now, or you can go home when you finish the dishes. And I said, you know what? I'm going to go home after I finish the dishes. And I said, because I've noticed that when the crew chief comes in and he sees that there's dirty dishes, he shuts down. Like he can't get over that because he feels like he's already behind. I said, but if the dishes are done when he comes in, he'll be in a better mood. And he just the manager just looked at me. And then he says, you're right. And then, so I went back to doing the dishes, finished them all finally. And of course, the girls brought more dishes, but that's not my shift anymore. I was only to do the ones that I did that were needing to be done before we opened, or before the afternoon shift took over. So I was done the dishes, and I went and I told the manager, I'm like, hey, I'm done. And I said, one of the things that I learned working at Peter Piper Pizza, which is where I learned to be a manager, which God told me I was going to work there when I was 8 years old, because my aunt took me to one of the restaurants, and I looked down at the employees making pizzas, and he put the words in my head, and I saw them, and I said, one day I'm going to work here. When I was 17 years old, I started working at Peter Piper Pizza, and I made it all the way to general manager. But then he took me to go learn how to be, to learn about stocks and bonds and all that, and stock mergers and acquisitions. He took me to an investment firm where I learned about cost basis, which is where it's the cost basis is it's an analysis of what you paid for, and if you were to sell it at any given moment, what you would either have made above what you invested, or would you be in the negative. And then he took me to be executive assistant, where I learned how to manage an organization. I learned about mission statements. I learned about I learned how to run a business from a CEO standpoint. Instead of being the one doing the work, how can you lead others to do the work? It was all in preparation. It's all been in preparation for the future. So now, being in this place, and I'm talking to this manager, he's soaking up all the information I'm giving him. He's just, it's like he's got my brain, he's just, taking all the information, because he knows one day I'm not going to be there, because God tells others when you're there about to lose the one person that's been helping them. You see, I was never meant to be the one to do the work. I was sent to teach. I was sent to explain how to run a business. So I told the manager, I said, look, when I was working for Peter Piper Pizza, they taught me how to analyze a person's behavior characteristics so that I can better teach them in the method that they need. I said that gave me an opportunity to become not just a trainer, but now I had a seat at the table with the leadership. And they would ask me, what do you think of this person's chances of being successful in the position? And I would be frank. I'd be like, look, they struggle in this, and their strengths are this. If we can get these weaknesses to get stronger, or give him someone or her someone, most of the people that I was training were men though, if we can give him someone who is strong in these areas, he will be a successful manager. And they were like, when they started to do what I gave them as a place of start, they began to see the fruit of the work that I had been putting in. They began to see the ability, and that's when it became a problem, because they didn't want to lose my ability to discern, my ability to distinguish between one bad seed and another. And they wanted to keep it for themselves so that they could benefit from my work. They could benefit from the glory that they were receiving because of the work that I was doing. And if you can't understand the duality of what I'm saying, then you're a yo-yo. But I was, telling them, this is what needs to happen. This is how you fix it. So I began to talk to this manager the same way. I said, look, this is how you fix the situation. And yesterday it came full circle. Now I haven't worked but with 3 of the girls. The fourth one has been calling in sick or has been giving up her shifts to someone else because she doesn't want to work with me. She wants to work with me as little as possible because her heart is hardened. And honestly, because she was the Judas. She was my Judas. She was the one who pretended to be my friend, pretended to be nice to me, pretended to teach me when the entire time she hated me. She wanted me gone. But she played nice. I knew she didn't like me because God showed me her true self. But I didn't think of her as a Judas because to me, she was out in the open. Like I knew she didn't like me. But to her, she thought she was being very covert. And when she gave that money to that young man to sink the ship, that's when I knew. That's when I knew that she was the Pharisee who was trying to take me down. So, so yesterday, as we're talking to me and the manager are talking, because he's complaining about the crew chief, and I'm like, okay, you have to understand when you and the other GM, when you and the GM are on site, he doesn't talk. He pulls back. I said, it has taken me this entire time to get him to talk to me. He only has a very close number of people that he talks to, that he trusts. And I said, it's hard. I've been trying to break down his walls, but he's got them pretty high up. And it's because he's been jilted so much. He's been hurt so much by the leadership in the organization that he doesn't trust anyone. He's like, I'm just going to do my job. I'm just going to do what I'm supposed to do, and I'm going to keep moving forward. I said, he's lost any ideology of becoming anything more than what he is right now. And he's like, and I said, and you have to show him that that's not the case anymore, that he no longer works with people who are not looking out for his best interest. And guess what I've been seeing since Sunday when I told the manager about washing dishes. Now, the conversation that I was just talking about happened yesterday. So what I've noticed happen since Sunday, whenever the shift change is about to happen, those dishes are getting washed. They are no longer leaving him with a stack of dishes. They are no longer leaving him with the feeling of being behind from the beginning. So when he gets in, he's like, my dishes are done. Well, I can manage it from here. I know how to keep it up from here. And he does. He keeps everybody, okay, go wash dishes, go do this, go do that. He starts to manage because now he doesn't have the hindrance of that weight that isn't his to carry. So the other managers are starting to see a difference. And he told me yesterday, this is where this is going. The manager told me yesterday, he goes, I'm seeing a difference. I'm seeing a difference in his paperwork. I'm seeing a difference in the way he manages, but he needs to move more. And I said, he will. But you have to show him how. You have to show him. You have to lead by example. I'm like, look what I did. I led by example. I said against their will, but I led by example. I went out, I cleaned the tables. I went out, I took care of customers. I smiled. I upsold. I did this. I did that. They didn't want to be left behind. They didn't want to be outshone. So they started pulling their weight. And he goes, yeah, all the guns started pointing at you. And I said, I know. And I said, I turned around and there were 360 guns pointing at me. And I was like, okay. And I said, but you know what? That needed to happen. And I said, because if the guns had been pointing at me, you and the other manager wouldn't have been able to change things the way you have. You wouldn't have been successful because they wouldn't have liked you. And he just looked at me and he goes, yeah, but it was unintentional. And I said, was it? And he just like, damn, exactly. And I said, I know why God sent me here. And I do my job as God tells me to do my job. I work as God tells me to work. Now, I don't need to tell this man that I have faith in God. He knows it. He sees it. He hears it. You know? I don't have to pound the walls about God, God, God. I don't have to tell them, oh, you're sinning, you're sinning, you're sinning. They feel the pressure of God. And that is exactly what I'm doing. I'm letting God be God. I'm letting God stretch himself, because I'm touching every aspect of that store, and I'm doing it with a smile, and I'm doing it with my heart full of love with him. I don't do anything that he doesn't tell me to do. I don't love on people because he doesn't tell me to love on people. I do what he tells me to do. And then I let him show up and show out. Yesterday, people were, when God, and I've heard of it, when you have the grace of God on you, people can't help themselves but to bless you. I've seen it, I've tasted it, but I haven't seen it consistently, only in spurts. And it was because it wasn't the time yet. God was allowing me to feel what it felt like to have his grace on me without it being too much. Because once it starts pouring, it's not going to stop. It's going to keep pouring. And it's going to keep pouring. And it's going to get heavier and heavier. And that's what he says. Are you strong enough? Can you handle what I'm going to give you? And he says he's going to give you so much your head will spin. And that you will say, please, I don't have any more space. I'm out. And you have to understand that when you're overflowing, that is when you overflow others. That is when you share the abundance in the way that God tells you to. Because no one is supposed to keep the abundance to themselves. They're supposed to share the abundance. When I have an abundance of happiness, guess what I do? I share it with everyone. I smile at everyone. I make jokes with everyone. I am happy with everyone. And everyone who comes in contact with me feels God's love, feels God's grace and mercy, feels God's love. And it makes them shine. And then they go and they do that to someone else, and they do that to someone else. And that is how God impacts everyone. Yesterday there was a gentleman that came in. His wife had ordered food over the phone. Well, the girl that took the order wrong. I could have sat there and bashed the girl and said, oh, well, she took the order wrong, so I'm sorry. You only have an extra large and a large, and that's it. I said, you know what? How can I fix it? I said, your pizzas are still in the oven, so I can get these in there. It's going to be about 10 minutes, but we'll get them done. Everything will come out at the same time. And he goes, oh, okay, well, I don't know what she wants. So he called his wife, and she's on the phone telling him what she wants. And he's like, I don't know. Here, this is easier. Can you talk to my wife? So I'm on the phone with his wife, on his phone, and I'm asking her, what would you like? And she goes, okay, so what do they have right now? And I explained what was on the screen. And she goes, okay, so I need 2 extra larges in the special. I'm like, okay. And I said, so you have this, and now these 2. And she goes, yes, okay. I said, I will get them in right now. And the manager is standing behind me, because what I did, as soon as he came in and he said that his order was wrong, I went to the back and I said, Cody, the order from Mitzi, it's wrong. We need to add more pizzas to it. Can you make sure that these pizzas all go in at the same time so they all come out at the same time? He goes, you got it. So while he's taking care of that, I go to the front, I take care of the order, I talk to the wife, get the order put in, and then he says, you know what, it's going to take 10 minutes, right? And I said, yeah, that's not enough for a glass of wine. I'm like, yep. So I poured him a glass of wine and sent him on his way, and I said, you know what, this was our mistake, so I'm going to give you my employee discount. And he just looked at me like, thank you. I really appreciate that. I said, the girl misunderstood what you were asking for, and I'm sorry about that, but we're going to make it right. And so I gave him 20% off. Because of that, he gave me a $15 tip on the credit card receipt, and I was like, that's my God right there. So he's like, okay, so the manager is at my computer and he sees what it is, and I hit send through, so it goes and prints out that. He makes sure the pizzas get made perfectly right. They all go in together. They all come out together 10 minutes later. And his wife arrives, and he goes, "Do you think we have time for another 2 glasses?" I'm like, "Oh yeah, I think you do." And of course, the manager's coming around the corner with the pizzas, and they're like, "Pizzas are done," and they're like, "Oh, well." He goes, "You know what? Just give me those 2 glasses anyway. They've got 16-year-old boys. The boys are gonna drive home." And I said, "Okay, no problem." And so I took care of it, and then I told the manager to bring him up for 2 glasses of wine. He added them to the order, and it made a mess. So he fixed it, and then they were happy. And he told the man, because now that he knows the manager's there, and he goes, "You know what? That young lady right there, she's amazing. She is awesome. She took care of us. She made sure we were okay, that we were happy, that we got everything we needed." She goes, "She's awesome." And he gave him a dollar tip, which those are for us girls that are working in that moment. So he's like, the manager looks up and he goes, "Thank you. I appreciate that." So the last time he worked with the last girl that I haven't worked with in a while, the one that was my Judas, is my Judas, he was at the register, and there was a customer who was not happy with his order. And she was standing there instigating a situation. And she snarked out something to the customer, and the customer grabbed the sandwich and threw it at the manager's face. And he was just like, "I've never had that happen before." I said, "She instigated it. She kept pushing on the customer, irritating him, stroking him, and then at the very last minute, when the fire is completely on flames, she spat on it and it sparked back at you." And he's like, "That's exactly what happened." And I said, "Yeah." And the cherry on top, the customer went and called the owner and told the owner about the situation. And it didn't matter that the customer threw this sandwich at him. The fact that he allowed the customer to get this upset and get to the owner, that was an issue. Because as a manager, you should be able to defuse the situation, to minimize the anger, and get them to be happy. At the very least, have called the GM instead of the owner. Because no owner wants to know that his customers are being